Sports Professor Riccaro honored Masters Week to reprise an interview that we did with CEO of the U.S. Golf Association, Mike Whan, obviously a linchpin in majors and also in the industry at all levels. The USGA hosts 14 national championships. Mike Whan directly involved in all of them. Guy who cut his teeth in 1987, Procter & Gamble. Then he goes to Wilson Ball and Glove in 94, VP of Marketing for TaylorMade in 95, Miami of Ohio, Cincinnati guy, Naperville, Ohio, Illinois guy. Most important, he has an incredibly diverse education and experience. And 2010, January 4th, the LPGA commissioner, where I spent a lot of time with him as well. By the way, 90,000 girls involved in early programs, over 500 sites, worthy of commendation no matter what. But yet, July 1 of 2021, he was appointed as the CEO of the USGA. We'll let Mike talk a little bit about it, but the claim to fame, by the way, is, in addition to all of these others, is he was a contributing editor or a chapter writer for my Sports Business Handbook. One of the things he said in Think About Your Check Writer's Objective Before You Think About Yours, an interesting concept, which we'll hear about from him, but he also talks about it in the LPGA perspective and obviously carried the day from that. We believed, the LPGA, in a culture of role reversal. Meant we spent more time thinking about our check writing partners than we spent thinking about tee boxes, shuttle buses, or camera angles. We knew that it would deliver for our business partners and help them activate their sponsorship goals, then raising purses, adding tournaments, and expanding TV coverage will be the direct result. Well, that mandate certainly worked for him, and the mandate worked equally as well, obviously, for the USGA after the LPGA. Mike has so much more to tell us, especially this golf week. We give you Mike Whan. Naperville High School, then Anderson High School in Cincinnati. Did you play golf in high school?
No, I was a football player and a baseball player. Football season and golf overlapped, which was probably lucky for me because I'm not sure I could have made the golf team. But luckily, with golf and football being the same season, but I worked on a golf course. Started as a caddy in Naperville, and then spent 9 summers, I think, working on the grounds crew of 2 different golf courses in Cincinnati. So I was that guy that coming out of the barn at 5:30 in the morning, cutting your greens and fairways, and leaving about 2:30 in the afternoon.
And developing a really sincere respect for the game, obviously. Miami, Ohio, it's an incredible program. You rewrote the record books there for academic excellence.
Yes? I also rewrote the record books for the fastest college football career. I think I was on the football team for 2.5 weeks until they listed the first depth chart. And I realized that if I had 14 more years, I might get to the playing field. But it was a good wake-up call. We realized my athletic career was over and my academic career had to begin. So, yeah, it's a great place to go. I always say the only downside of Miami is it's the only school you have to say the state name afterwards. Otherwise, people go, wow, it must have been really hot down there. But Miami, Ohio was a great run. And from there to P&G.
Yeah, well, P&G in 87 for about, 7 years?
Yeah.
How was that?
Yeah, I went to Procter & Gamble, if I was being honest, because I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I probably still struggle with that challenge. Right. But I thought P&G brand management was a great chance to kind of learn a little bit of everything and not really commit to anything. P&G people probably just threw up their mouth when they heard that. But like I was the brand manager at Crest, and so you had to understand manufacturing and marketing, sales and finance. We were taking the brand global. You really had to understand advertising. So it was a great opportunity for me. It also gave me a global perspective that I'm not sure I would have gotten at that age anywhere else. And so it was until I got a phone call about working in the golf business, I don't think I had ever had any plans of leaving.
Well, we'll get to that in a second. But, you could have taken a simple job somewhere with a brand, but you went with an organization that probably has the most diverse collection of brands in the history of the world at P&G, right?
Yeah, it was, and they had a big belief in that just as soon as you got comfortable and successful, they'd move you to the next one. And so they probably fed my OCD and ADHD problems because just as soon as you thought you really had something figured out and were really starting to figure it out, they would put you on the next challenge. And I think I've been kind of following that. Here I am 4 years later, kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah, I was just going to say that is a hell of a metaphorical training from January 2010 from the LPGA to 11 years later to running the USGA, right?
Yeah, I mean, every place I've gone, my friends have said, "Don't go now. Don't go to the LPGA because the LPGA is in financial trouble. Don't go to the USGA because they got to take
Right.
on this distance thing." And the more people tell me don't, the more excited I get about the do.
And don't go to Wilson and run the ball and glove division in 1994, but you did it anyway.
Exactly right. Yeah, don't leave P&G for Wilson. I remember the CEO at the time of Procter and Gamble said, "Why would you leave Procter and Gamble to go work at Wilson Sports?" And it was an interesting meeting. I was young, and I remember looking at him and saying that your goal, your career objective for me and my career objective for me are two totally different things. I feel like I'm getting off the on ramp and about to go onto the autobahn, and you think I'm about to go onto some state local highway. But I knew that at some point in my career I was going to marry my love for sport and my love for business, and it started right there when I left P&G to go to Wilson, and from there I've sort of been in sports ever since.
Yeah, and speaking of the Autobahn, then TaylorMade a little while later.
Yeah, TaylorMade was. It's funny to tell people when I went to TaylorMade because now it's this big, successful business. But when I got there, we had just laid off about a third of the employees. There was this new company called Callaway just down the street that was kind of tearing into the market share. But it was really an incredible time for me. I got to be there through burner bubble and titaniums and the launch of a hybrid club the first time in America. And I've said many times, I think TaylorMade paid for at least of one of my three kids' colleges, and certainly gave me the MBA that I was missing in my life.
And your golf game, notwithstanding your other mediocre athletic genes, has skyrocketed because you were around people who knew the sport.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't really get serious about my golf game until I got to the LPGA,
Yeah.
and I didn't want the athletes to be embarrassed by their commissioner, and they probably were, regardless of how I played golf. They were probably, but I mean, I was playing. I always tell people I was on the pro-am tour for 12 years. Every Wednesday playing in a pro-am, and we had, I don't know, a couple of thousand LPGA teaching professionals. So one time I said to one of the people that worked on my team, I need an LPGA teaching professional. And that was probably about 2011. And I've had a teacher ever since. And that's really, I mean, I've said this many times, you don't get better at this game without help. And I got help.
Well, but listen, you don't need help in anything you do. You invent things, you don't follow. And one of the things that was most fun about our relationship is watching you maneuver around through those Wednesday pro-ams, because you have a checklist of the following 953 people you need to deal with on those times. And I don't know if the LPGA still does it, but you play 9 and then you rotate with new people for another 9. And you would play basically one hole with each person. And depending on whether that person needed a stroking or a whipping, you would play well or not. So there is a method to Mike Whan's madness.
It is funny you say that. When I got to the LPGA, we didn't do the 9 and 9 thing. And you know me, like I don't have the attention span to talk to you for 5 hours. But after 2.5 hours, like we've done what we came to do. So I said to my team one time, would it be okay if I got to the 10th tee if I dropped back with a group and just switched out with somebody else? And so I started doing that. And then the players said, can we do that? And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, could we play 9 holes and let another player come take our back 9 holes? And I thought, you know what? When I finish playing a pro-am, I really know those players. I follow them probably for the rest of their career. Sometimes as an amateur, you end up sponsoring them. So we went to this thing called 9 and 9. Every time you play in a pro, I'm going to play 9 holes with one player, another 9 holes with another player. It's funny. I remember one time Tim Fincham saying to me, that was a crazy idea. And then 2 years later, they were doing it on the PGA Tour. But it was, you're right. I mean, I always say, as a guy who spent most of his life as a sponsor, I've been a check writer most of my life. And then I woke up at an organization asking you to write a check to us. And I remember what it feels like to be a check writer and then get to the event you sponsored and realize that contractually, they probably did what they were supposed to do, but there's nobody there that was in the meeting that talked me into it. And when I see things I didn't like, if they were using the wrong brand or my parking wasn't right for my VIP, there was nobody there to fix it. So I made a commitment that, if I was going to talk somebody into being a title sponsor, I was going to be there when they were a title sponsor. And I was going to make sure that their week was as good as it could be. And you know this pretty well, Rick, but when you're sitting with a sponsor at the week in which they sponsor the event, at some point in that week, they turn to you and say, hey, Mike, what should we be doing to make this event better? Right. And they won't say that the other 51 weeks of the year. They go back to their real life doing whatever they do for a living. And if you're there when they turn to you and say that, you make that event better because you say, oh, I'm glad you asked, Rick. We got to do 3 things. And right then, they're ready to do them. So if you miss that window, you sort of miss it until the following year.
Well, and the irony and the importance of this, and we'll get into it with the USGA in a minute, But the most important credential I think you have is you are a contributor to the Sport Business Handbook, my book, which was really important. But one of the things you said in there was you made or influenced your new business people, your partners, who were the players, by the way, to identify and know three things you needed this week. You had a checklist and a card, and you basically delegated the responsibility of these players to be businesswomen that would promote the tour. Charlie Meacham was the commissioner for longevity and stability, and you were basically the commissioner that turned golfers into salespeople.
It's funny. Players used to say to me, like on a Tuesday, "Hey, Mike, how can I help this week?" And I used to kind of blow that off and go, you play well. And I remember looking at some of their faces thinking they didn't like that. Like they were asking, how can I help? And I wasn't taking them up on their help. And so I used to walk around with this 5x7 card in my back pocket. You've seen it. And I had a player one time say to me, "Hey, can I see that card? You always have a card in your back pocket." So I showed it to her, and we were at the Kia Classic, and it was all about Kia, who their leadership was, and I had pictures of the people that might be there that week. I had mailing addresses because at the end of the week, I would mail them a thank you card. And then on the bottom in red, it'd always be the 5 or 6 places I had to be that week, the places where it was going to be important that I showed up. And she said to me, "You ought to give one of these to every player on tour, and every player ought to give one to their caddy, because I think you'd be amazed how people would look for the people in the pictures. They'd write thank you notes." And so we started that in 2010. And just at least for the 12 years I was there, every week you showed up. When you showed up and registered for the event, the first thing you got was your 5x7 card. And you got one thank you card that hadn't been filled out yet. So you had to write run thank you card a week. And we would tell you who to write it to. Sometimes it would be a CEO, sometimes it'd be a CMO, sometimes it'd be their biggest customer they had coming in town. And I remember one time I was talking to a CEO and he said, "Mike, enough with the thank you cards." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he'd been a sponsor for 4 or 5 years. And he said, "I finally had one of my secretaries come in and clean out one of the drawers in my office because I couldn't throw them away. Like, what are you going to do? Throw away a thank you card from Michelle Wheat?" And I said, "So one of your drawers on your desk is committed to the LPGA?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "We'll never stop that now." Because now knowing that mattered enough to you. And he said, we've been a sponsor of the NBA for 12 years. I've never gotten a thank you card in my life. And I remember saying to him, "Sounds like an NBA problem, not a Mike Whan problem." So I've been a sponsor. I know what it would have meant to me if an athlete would have just said thank you. And I felt like we could be the franchise that would turn that in, and we did, and it's still happening today.
Well, it's happening today, and it's happening a lot in the golf business. We'll talk about the men in a minute, but wouldn't it be great as a fantasy if Zach Bonds, Saquon Barkley, and Jalen Hurts wrote Lincoln Financial and said, "Dear Lincoln Financial, thank you very much for allowing us to play in your stadium, and we love you guys." I mean, what do you think?
I've said many times, I'll bet you LeBron James has never been asked to send a thank you card. I bet you he's sent them before on his own sponsorship. But you're not making $40 million a year just because you can make free throws. People are investing in your brand, and to say thank you to the people that are investing in your brand seems like a small thing. So when players would say to me, "Hey, Commish, how can I help this week?" I learned pretty early in my career blowing that off. Not only frustrated them, but it was a huge miss on my part. And when I got the players and the caddies engaged in the business of growing the LPGA, like when I would walk in and say, "Hey, we landed that guy that you played 9 holes with back in Kings Mill, Virginia," or "We landed that guy that you played 9 holes with in Carlsbad, California, and thank you for your thank you note because he's referenced it." I mean, it would just build onto itself. And so, it's a little thing, but I think sometimes professional athletes get away from the appreciation of the game. And it was just a little way for us to kind of remember that if it wasn't for these title sponsors, we'd all be home playing in some member for a set of irons, but we're out here playing for a few $1 million.
Yeah. So there are only a few people in the world, I think, that you would allow to get away with this kind of question without hanging up. So you start the don't push the button. You start as the CEO July 1, 2021, right in the middle of COVID. So what have you done for me lately? What have you done the last 3 years, 4 years?
It is funny when you started the company in 2021. I left Florida, which, as you can remember, didn't have COVID. We decided early on there was no COVID in Florida.
Yeah, right.
And I moved to New Jersey, where they clearly decided they did have COVID. So I walked into the building the first time. Can't wait to meet my 350 employees. And it was me, for the first week, I was the only guy in there. So I started coming in shorts because there was nobody around. And I was moving stuff around in the office and set in my office. And I guess word got out that I was showing up in shorts. And so the question that was flying around the intranet of the USGA is, are shorts okay now? And so I got this email question one time saying, "I see you're wearing shorts." I'm like, "How do you see?" And I guess the security guard said the new guy comes every day, like in shorts and a T-shirt. I said, "I'm only coming in shorts because nobody's here." But no, it's been a great been a great evolution. You know me. You can wind me up on what have you done, but we doubled the women's U.S. Open purse in the first couple of months. We took the men's Open purse from 12.5 million to 21.5 million, in 2 years. We added a new championship called the U.S. Adaptive Open, which is a U.S. Open for just players with disabilities. We endowed the Walker and Curtis Cups, in my mind, the biggest and most important amateur team events in the games. We raised 12.5 million, matched it with our own 12.5 million, endowed that. We started the United States National Development Team. You know this, Rick, but probably a lot of your viewers don't. But in golf, every young woman, and quite frankly, every young man who makes it to the pro levels, who comes from any country other than America, comes out of a country program. There wasn't a country program in America. That's always driven me crazy. So about 18 months ago, we started one, and we'll be in that business for the next 100 years. We got serious about water conservation. We started a program called 15, 30, 45. In the next 15 years, we're going to commit $30 million to make sure any golf course can reduce its water footprint by 45% anywhere in the world. That may not be a big deal if you live in Orlando or New Jersey, but if you live in Vegas or Tucson or San Francisco or Portugal or Australia, you figure out water or you're going to be hurting to have golf courses. So we're going to figure that out. So I'm really excited. I joined the USGA when I was 56 years old. So one of the things I said to the board is, when you used to say the word long-term to me, I used to think in terms of 20 or 25 years and future generations. But long-term to me now is 10 months. And so if you're expecting a guy who's going to come in and talk about what golf is going to look like in 2045, I'm not playing that game. We're gonna go now. We're gonna make real changes and make real differences now. So I have actually really enjoyed currently being 60, because 60 feeds my hyperactivity anyway, because I feel like the wick is short, and like I gotta make sure these things come to fruition and come to fruition fast. And I enjoy the anxiety and the pressure of thinking that you don't have as much time as you thought you did.
Well, and just turning a little bit more than 60, but appreciate what it means to see maybe the end in a you just on the back nine. You're able to parse through the BS a little bit easier than you used to be, right? And I know you are very political with your thinking and how you act, or you wouldn't be in your position, but you're able to combine saying the right thing and getting stuff done and not hide behind frivolities.
Yeah, it's funny. When we launched the United States National Development Team, I hired a woman who used to run all the tour operations at the LPGA, and she had just retired. And I said, "How'd you like to come out of retirement 3 months after you retired?" And so she came to me with 3-year goals. Here's where we're going to be. Here's what the United States National Development Program is going to look like in 3 years. What do you think, Mike? And I said, "That's great." And I tore it up in front of her. And she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "We're not in this for 3 years. We're not in this for 30 months. We're not in this for 8 years. We're going to be doing this for 100 years. So you tell me what this thing has to look like. And then you and I can talk about how fast we can get there. But I'm not, this isn't a rate of return thing. I'm not going to look at this in 2 years and decide whether or not it was a good idea." I remember saying to the board, "Vote no for this unless you want the USGA to be doing this 80 years from now. Because if we're doing this forever. We're going to take on America's greatest weakness when it comes to developing junior athletes, and we're going to solve it." And so, I enjoy thinking that we're going to do something that matters for the next few generations. And when you talk about something that matters for the next few generations, you can sort of get over yourself on where you're going to be in 2 years and 3 years. You just can't back off the long-term beacon.
Let's put live, the economy, kids having other sports to do, international relations, the political landscape. Let's put it all in one bucket and ask this question, this context. What's the biggest challenge you have today?
The biggest challenge is managing the greatest increase the game's ever seen in the 120 years that we've been tracking it here. So we've been waiting a long time for this parade to come. And what I mean by that is we're 60% bigger as a sport than we were 10 years ago. So in the last 10 years, we've grown by 60%. And 80% of that growth was driven by women, people of color, and juniors. So it's the perfect storm. We've not only added over 10 million people to our game, but we've done it with demographics that generally have been unrepresented in our game. So all the things we dreamed of, quietly didn't really believe were doable, have now come true. And so I've always said this, we're sort of like the teenager who's growing faster than the coordination. We can look a little awkward at times because we didn't expect it to happen, and we certainly didn't expect it to happen this fast. So we run the risk of waking up in a few years going, "Man, that was really a great couple of years, wasn't it?" The good news is it's been 5 years now of growth, and it really looks like it's going to keep going. But my biggest challenge is to say it's happened. We finally had the explosion that the golf world's been waiting for since 1920, and so now we've got to nurture that into future generations, not just a really cool 5-year blip. And that may sound, like taking a really big thing that you said and breaking it down, but like at the end of the day, nothing else matters unless we can take this incredible growth, harness it, and throw it forward into the next generation.
And you're the well equipped to throw it forward to the next generation. So, final question for Mike Whan: where are you going to be in 2045? You already said short term. Don't look at long term. What? Go ahead.
It's funny. I just announced at our annual meeting last weekend where we announce events that are pretty far out. So I announced that we're going to play the Curtis Cup, the 10 GBI men against 10 USF in 2044 at Pine Valley, #1 golf course ranked in the world. And so I showed this big picture of Pine Valley, and I said, if you look really closely at this slide, right there next to the tee, if you look really close, there's a walker. That walker is going to be my walker. I planted it there now. So in 20 years, I'm going to be standing on the tee box at the Walker Cup saying, I launched this thing. I was part of the day when we told the world about this. I'm really proud that we're going to play the Curtis Cup, the women's version of the Walker Cup, in 2034 at Pine Valley. And then 2044, we'll be back again with the men. But I'll be playing the game. I don't know how many artificial parts will be playing with me. But what I love about this game is I started playing it when I was 12, started working it when I was 13. And here I am 60 still talking about, what's next.
What I love about the game is exactly that. The game has a solid future. It survived and thrived around COVID. And also, some of the best business managers existing on the planet are stewards of the game, and you are at the top of the best. Mike Whan, thank you very much for this. As always, I'll keep checking in with you if that's okay.
Thanks, pal. Good to be with you.
You're on the record. Masters Week always tremendous, but as normal, couple of weeks really significant heading into that. Here is our opening drive, 5-1. First of all, NCAAs on the men's side, 9% increase in viewership since 1993. The bottom line is it's the first appearance for these teams, chalk and top seeds. Everybody says the era of Cinderella is over. Yeah, but the high-quality storytelling is still carrying the day, and as a result, it is a big number. On the women's side, UCLA completes its historic sweep and rout of South Carolina. The numbers is significant. The 37-1 final record. Nobody expected it. But again, at the end of the day, the men's and women's titles, especially with the deal of women's sports becoming so prolific and numbers with the WNBA and beyond, carries the day as the first topic. Number two, NFL owners look at significant rule changes. First of all, there were over 920 returns on the dynamic kickoff years ago. After the change last year, over 2,000. That's a significant change. Second, the NFL significantly increases the opportunities to second-guess referees, probably in anticipation of a referee work stoppage and replacement refs, allowing the people in New York to overturn the deals quickly, and of course look at penalties that the referees may not have even caught. So look for numbers as they do to rise coming out of the owners' meetings. That's number two. Number three, how about Seattle? They're looking for a bid for the Seahawks of anywhere, some say, according to the numbers that Latham and Watkins are dealing with handling the sale, up to $11 billion. And why not with the television contracts in place? Same time, Vegas and Seattle are allowed to put bids together managed by the NBA for the NBA franchise, maybe starting at $10 billion, clearly because of the sale of the Lakers at $10 billion before. You may have two franchises in Seattle who's collectively going to be committed for anywhere from $20 billion or more. That is unheard of, and Seattle may get two of their franchises, one sold and one returned. That's number three. Number four, Publicis acquires a sports marketing agency 160/90 from WME for more than $500 million. The figure is about 2.5 times the roughly $200 million Endeavor paid for the agency in 2018. More than 670 employees across the U.S., and they produced activations for global brands, and a number of them, including Super Bowl, Olympics, World Cup, and the like. The holding companies now view sports marketing as a major highlight of economic growth. I know I was bought by Omnicom years ago, back when I was in the space, and it's only getting bigger. Number 4. Number 5, the IPL. Franchise sales of $3.41 billion. Ticket demand extreme. RCB home games tickets ranged from 15,000 to more, adjusting to currencies, 3,000, 4,000 US. The value of the overall ecosystem, nearly $20 billion, and growing even more. As we look at the numbers of 5 significant opening drive issues heading into Masters Week. We look at the tournament and beyond, special focus on how wonderful, unique this event really is. 5 issues. Number 1, the whole notion of television. First time in 2026, Amazon Video, a U.S. broadcast partner, providing 2 hours of exclusive live coverage on Thursday and Friday. They pay a pretty penny, but also access a pretty penny for their subscribers. CBS gets the final 2 rounds for its 71st consecutive year. ESPN covers the first 2 rounds. Paramount Plus streams all the weekend action. Total live TV streaming coverage. About 100 hours across all platforms. What it means is 71 straight years. CBS as the head. This ain't going to change. That's number 1. Number 2, the sponsorship as a result. Based on 2025 data, the same partner structure for 2026, $60.45 million. AT&T, IBM, Mercedes-Benz, the secondary, the other partners, Delta Airlines, Rolex, and UPS. The bottom line is Bank of America joins the roster. The roster quite prolific. You could add 10 more sponsors and triple the price. They'd all come in. That's the beauty of leverage and non-dilution as it relates to Augusta National and the Masters. Number 2. Number 3, the price of tickets. Well, I know that practice round tickets show at $125 or $150. Individual tailie tickets show for $160, up from $140 last year. The official 4-day patron package, $525 for 4. Let me guarantee you the resale market, just take a look at it, it's nowhere near that. It's probably the most expensive ticket in sports and will continue to be. So that's number 3. Number 4, the overall economics. The official hospitality programs for 2025, $220,000. The official merchandise sale during Masters Week, about $70 million. How do we know this? Well, because the rookies, who are the first-time viewers or first-time shoppers, will wait for hours on end to get their first shot at the Garden Gnome, the most popular newfound merchandise. The Masters folks decided pretty early to put years on hats, on shirts, on everything else, and snapped on up. Pockets on shirts, kind of newfound, snapped on up. The number's really high. The merchandise tag is a souvenir in and of itself. It is large. We're going to test that out in a little while as I go. And then the on-site sales are pretty unique. You can't really get anything off-site, although a new off-site catering has been a bonanza for people who want to do Masters parties. Do that when I get back. Tournament generates, all in all, about $120 million in economic impact. Georgia region from roughly 200 to 250,000 visitors all told. So those economics are number 4. Finally, number 5, $21 million. The winners receiving $4.2 million of the total purse. The exact breakout will be officially announced during tournament week. But guaranteed this, at the end of the day, if you said, are you competing, the pros, for the prize money, they'll say, yeah, I'll take it, but nobody in his right mind is there because of the prize money hunt. It's the overall legacy of what most people think is the best tournament in sports. Certainly the major that stays in the same location and builds on it every single year. I'm heading for my 26th Masters, so I got to go. Thank you very much for Callie Kazara for helping us put this together. Thank you all for listening and watching, and join us again as we recap the business issues of the Masters as part of the $2.6 trillion business of sports. I'm the sports professor Rick Haro. Speak with you soon.